Welcome to KR Films Entertainment Channel. Today I am going to explain a 2013 thriller sci-fi film, The Philosophers. Waking up on the same bed, Petra and James parked ways to meet again in philosophy class at Jakarta College. After seeing off his girlfriend, the guy goes to sleep a little more, and naturally goes to class at the last moment. He runs into the audience just a second before the principal, Mr. Eric Zimit, slams the door. The lesson begins with a talk about logic, and how after graduating from the course students are going to mix logic and philosophy in everyday life. There are even small discussions about the fact that many people live well without deep science, which greatly offends the teacher. Zimit asks students to think of favorite thought experiments they have done over the past year. Chips remembers the experiment with the monkey learning to rewrite text, while Jack remembers the more brutal example of people tied up on railroad tracks, among whom they had to choose ones who were worthy of survival, and those who could be sacrificed. Christ, the group again begins to argue on this topic, accusing each other of cynicism. Bonnie recalls an experiment in which they discussed the value of friendship, whether to test the strength of best friends or live in ignorance. After listening to the students, Mr. Zimit is not going to stop talking. He has prepared for the group the last and most serious experiment. He invites students to act out several scenarios of the end of the world, and for this he prepares a box with the main roles. According to the legend, an atomic cataclysm happens on the planet, and students have a fortified bunker in which they can live for a year. But it's only designed for 10 people, given that there are almost 24 of students in the group. Georgina tries to refuse to participate, believing the experiment is not humane, but when the teacher offers her to volunteer her place in the bunker, the girl is blown away and decides to fight. Ikitra, on the other hand, spits on the crazy fantasies and is about to leave the audience. But Zimit stops her, promising to lower her grade if the student refuses to participate in the work. And if this doesn't help her stay, her boyfriend's grade in the diploma will also drop. After pulling out papers with professions, the students must decide which of them is worthy of getting a place in a shelter and who will have to stay under the radioactive fungus. Without waiting for the voting to begin, the teacher gets rid of one of the guys who got to be a poet. The rest of the students are very outraged by this decision, but Zimit believes that this profession will be absolutely useless in the revival of the earth. Offended by the teacher for mercilessly destroying unnecessary people, the students organize a conspiracy and close the door to the bunker right in front of him. The bunker in the students' fantasies turns out to be very comfortable, and they plunge into a fictional world. Making plans for the future, Petra and James, even in this illusion, do not part. Hoping to make a contribution to demography, Zimit brings new data into the experiment, is the only one who knows the code to open the bunker in a year. But even this doesn't make the students change their minds and let him in. He's dying right in front of their eyes. The body of the teacher remains lying at the entrance, and all year the residents of the shelter think about what awaits them at the end of the term. They all try to fill their thoughts and occupy time, but in the evenings young people are tormented by the same fears. Sometimes, secretly from everyone, Petra comes to the glass door to mourn the teacher, of whom there is less and less left. Finally the day of release comes and the door really asks for the code. Having tried all the ways, young people still do not find a way to open the armored ceiling. First they eat up the rest of the supplies, after which they use their pets and even each other, but this still doesn't save. When oxygen runs out, the last members of the group fall asleep. There's a tense atmosphere in the class, but Zimit continues the experiment, calmly pointing out to the students their mistakes. Now scenario takes place in the desert, all the same nuclear disaster, bunker and choice between comrades. Only this time additions join the profession. For example, James turns out to be an unconventional guy, and Georgina, after a business trip to Africa, could pick up a deadly virus. Chips has the least luck. Despite the fact that he is a carpenter and his skills will be useful to rebuild the world, he turns out to be sterile and has no chance of living offsprings. Hearing this, Georgina breaks down and is rude to the teacher, calling him a madman. but this doesn't bother him much. Zimit insists on continuing the practice and hoping that their years of study were not in vain. This time the students argue more logically, taking into account the profession, health and reproductive ability of the applicant. Everyone is given the word, so that he can tell about himself and try to convince his friends. When the turn comes to poet, the teacher again removes him without even letting him finish, but now the teenagers do not undertake to punish him. Remembering their past experience, once in the bunker the group begins to establish a life. But given the new introductory, unpleasant surprises await them. For example, Petra finds James in bed with Jack, who is gay in real life. What happened makes the guys get together and discuss who is better to create a couple with to take care of procreation. So Patch is paired with Mr. Zimit, which James strongly dislikes. 10 weeks later none of the girls get pregnant. And Zimit sets a new rule: polygamous relationships. This introduces a new wave of quarrels, since many girls do not smile at such a prospect. After one of the fights, in which the teacher flies with a point in the ear, he decides to take revenge on the recalcitrant students and opens the door to the bunker, destroying everyone. The audience gets quieter, but James breaks the silence. Remembering the beginning of the lesson, the guy realizes that his card was a fake. The teacher deliberately made the guy pull out a card having which it would be difficult for him to get a place in the bunker and gain authority. Having stolen the box, the guy finds a double bottom in it, trying to understand why Zimit dislikes him so much. Another legend is born in the dispute which the philosophers must live, and now James plays the role not of a farmer but of a florist, and the rescue bunker is located on a beautiful tropical island. While the company has the opportunity to walk along the beach, Petra makes changes to the selection criteria. This time she wants to decide for herself who gets a place in the shelter and who doesn't. The logic of the girl surprises him, and despite the fact that she explains her every decision, the teacher lowers her mark for a strange selection, because, instead of engineers and farmers, the student leaves fashion designers and an unfortunate poet, who has never been given a chance. The girl doesn't take the teacher again. In addition, it turns out that she stole a pistol from him, by cunning using which Zimit planned to defend his right to asylum. Realizing that they are surviving, the teacher tries to blackmail the students with the exit code. But it turned out in vain when in previous scenario he opened the door or the girls memorized the combination. In fairness to Peter, he excludes himself from the list, but Chips throws the girl into the bunker, and he and the rest head to the boat to try to escape in another way. The company that got seats in the bunker had a great year there, playing cards and smoking joey cigarettes. Surprisingly, even the poems of the poet were useful to them, supporting the desire to survive in the renegades. Petra also didn't forget to include her relationship with James in the fantasy, closing with her lover in the workshop. The girl even built a harp for one of the musicians. A year later, the rescued came out of the bunker to find out that atomic bombs never fell on their island, but not wanting to allow a happy ending, Zimit declares that the rest of the world was destroyed, and in the end, the students outlived their usefulness, having failed to establish a population. Petra doesn't give up, and forgetting about the grades continues to argue with the teacher, proving that even if so, they lived an excellent life on the island. And after that, called for their end by pressing the bottom of the falling rocket. The controversy is gaining momentum. The teacher declares that he managed to survive on the island, and now he is threatening James, hoping to prevent everyone from dying. But the students, tired of Mr. Zimit's antics, stand up for a fellow student, and Petra finishes her version of the legend as planned. Cheats turns out to be the happiest in all this confusion. The guy comes up with his own reality in which he found another uninhabited island, and having got rid of his friends by pure chance, remains on it in the company of 6 girls. Despite his sterility, the young man doesn't lose hope for a miracle and spends every day trying to impregnate someone. Even this hilarious addition doesn't take the pressure off Zimit. He interrupts the lesson by asking the students to turn in their textbooks. Everyone leaves the audience and only Petrol lingers and goes out into the garden, inviting the teacher to follow her. The girl reprimands the teacher for the fact that because of their difficult romance he took revenge on James. Because only this was the impetus for the ridiculous experiment. She openly declares that she loves a fellow student, and it would be easier for her if Zimit let them go without too much drama. Eventually she kisses Erica hoping that they will part without offense. Zimit comes to his office and not for the first time, it's a store-bought sandwich for dinner alone. Then he opens the drawer and pulls out a gun. A second after which a gunshot sounds. Eric Zimit again climbs the steps to his office and it's very difficult to understand whether the shot was actually fired or if this is another story from his philosophical world. Thanks for watching.